paid for 5 because I was working on Wednesdays.
Right.
In the meantime, Liza decided she was refinishing antique furniture when she was in college.
Yeah.
So what we did was we found a little refinishing shop in Foster City. But the guy wasn't interested in the manager. He wanted to actually sell it. And I told Liza, don't work for him because you're going to puff the place up. It's going to cost us more money. Well, what happened was we were going to buy that deal and then found out that the guy didn't have a lease. And they were actually going to kick him out of the building. So what we did was I told the guys, I'll tell you what, let me go see if I can find another space and we'll cut a new deal. So what initially was going to cost us, I think, $12,000 cost us $4,000 because I just bought his materials and his mailing list, and I hired all his crew to come to work at the new place, which was in Redwood City.
Right.
So anyway, that started the refinishing business, and obviously I had the auction.
This is mid-'80s now.
This was 1983, pushing into 84. In March of 84, I went to Billings, Montana to go to auction school. I figured if I was going to actually do this, I want to figure out, go to school. It's a 2-week course. It ain't like you're going forever.
Right.
But it's a 2-week school, and you got to at least learn the basics of what is expected in the industry. So by finishing that school, I went back to Arnie. I said, Barney, I went to the school. He says, but I ain't gonna hire as an auctioneer. I says, thank you very much, Arnie. I'm out of here. So then I went to Golden Gate, worked there also. They hired me as a ringman, but still wouldn't put me up. Wound up working for Morgan Hill Auction Company, and was me and the guy that actually started Bay City, Jerry Flores.
Yeah.
Started doing the deal at this Morgan Hill Auction Company, and that lasted about a year. Then he went upside down. Then I worked for an antique auction company down there once a month, and this was like 1984, 85 now. And we every once in a while, and we also, the refinishing shop following year opened up into an antique store and a refinishing shop. The following year we had 2 stores and the refinishing shop. And in 1989 we bought the building that turned it into an antique auction house. So, and then we ran that deal from 1989 till 2001. But anyway, that deal rolled along, and in the meantime I'm always selling. I got more into classics. I would do classic car auctions all over the country, and it was really great because in 1985 they came in with the California Auction Commission. I was one of the first ones to get an auction license in the state of California, and it was reciprocal with all these other states with their auction licenses, which means I could work in any state.
Right.
In 1991 we had a surplus of cash in the California Auction Commission. The general fund, or whoever was in charge of it, decided they took the money out of there and put it in the general fund and disbanded the auction commission in 1991, which in essence put me out of work because I could now not work in a state that had a license because we had no reciprocity. So that killed that deal. But I was doing 25, 28 auctions a year. I was working literally about every other week. I was on the road somewhere doing a sale. But I'm also doing all these other sales too. So by 1993, I'm working at, in fact, I was working at Haven in 1987. So anyway, by 93, I'm
Auction
working
City?
at,
Haven?
Auction City.
Yeah.
And a rabbi tapped me on the shoulder, and he said, we got some stuff up in San Francisco I want you to sell.
That's what I think I met you around there. Yeah. Around that area.
So anyway, I came up, and it was behind one of the schools.
But you already had the antique auction, right?
The antique auction was blowing and going.
But you bought that building first, right?
I bought the building in '89 to put the auction in there. Instead of rent the building, I bought it.
Right.
And then
you thought about the antique, which is the restaurant right now. Yeah. Angelica's.
It took me a year to rehab it because I literally rehabbed it out of pocket.
Right.
I was so broke. I used to take a deal, like it'd be in Atlantic City or someplace. I'd take a deal. I had a credit card and maybe $30 in my pocket. If they wouldn't have taken a credit card, I couldn't take a cab. I was that broke because what I was doing was I was just taking all the money I could get and rebuilding the building to have the auction. instead of finance it, I'm figuring I'm just going to pay for it. It took me an extra 6 months to build it, which was bad if you think about it. You probably should have just borrowed the money. You would have been working sooner. So anyway, with that thought process, I did finally finish the building and opened, I think, in late '89, early '90 with the first auction.
I know I'm not blocking the driveway for sure.
No, you're fine. You're not blocking him. You're not blocking him.
Nope.
So anyway, that deal worked really well. And then anyway, the rabbi in '93 now, I'm working on weekends, and I come up to San Francisco, and he had 40 automobiles. He says, "Man, where'd you get all these cars?" He says, "Well, you know, the people gave them to me to sell." I says, "Okay." So I said, "What do you need?" He said, "Just sell them." So I sold them, and he said, "I'll call you." I figured I wasn't going to see this guy for a year. Maybe I think 3-4 months later, he's got more cars. I'm up selling them. Third time he calls me, we're out at Hunters Point at one of the old
Right, HP.
He got 1,500 cars in that building.
Wow.
I said, "Where'd you get all these cars?" He said, "Well, in 1987, they changed the law that up to $5,000 you can donate your car. You don't need an appraisal." So I borrowed money against my house, put an ad, donate your car, take a tax write-off. And people gave me their cars. I said, "That's amazing." So anyway, it was blowing and going. Within about 18 months, we were doing 4 auctions up and down through California, and he was doing $7-8 million a year, and we were blowing. But then, probably about '95, early '95, what happened was I noticed that people were standing out in front of his place with clipboards getting signatures. And I told him at that time, I said, "You're going to have some problems here, son." He says, "No, I'm a charity, not going to." I said, "They're going to bother you." And in essence, they did. And also, too, he was repairing cars out on the piers, and his crew caught the friggin' pier on fire and burned it down. So that pissed him off.
Yeah.
So, with that, among other things, they put him out of business. But at that time, I realized, hey, this thing could actually work. So that's in '95 is when I started going after the charity auction business. And then I bought the next building because I was going to go into the car business.
So you bought the one in Springs?
I bought the one on Spring. I got the great sweetheart deal with the long payment terms.
Right.
And rehabbed that building. And we're still doing auctions every month in the antique auction. We still have the antique store open. And we still have the refinishing shop open. So, and we're having kids. So it's kind of like, watch this act. So anyway, that in fact,
and the rabbi, they were still doing it in the pier.
The rabbi was still doing the pier, but then they switched rabbis. Then I did it for another rabbi who was also doing it on the pier, and then he was doing it in South City. Not in South City, but right off Mariposa. He was doing his deal.
Yeah.
So anyway, we were doing that probably into the late '90s with the different rabbis.
I remember.
In the meantime, I started doing my own deal.
Right.
And that's when we started doing the benefit auctions. We started doing benefit auctions in 1985. St. Charles School, first school we did. In 1985, we did our first charity auction. But then I realized that if I did a charity auction, I actually would have an entree to be able to set up a car program with these people.
Right.
And one thing led to another, and I wound up with over 100 different nonprofits.
You did.
You know, sending cars.
Right.
So everybody was doing great. That deal rolled along. We closed that deal. Actually, I sold the deal in 2011, and we had sold 51,000 cars by the time we closed.
And you still ran Desert for a little bit too.
And well, no, I was hired by the company.
That bought your thing.
I sold to. They hired me on a 5-year contract, and I worked as their auctioneer for 5 years until they got bought out by Copart, who went full computer and didn't use auctioneers anymore. So anyway, that
was great. All right, watch this. I'm gonna put this up. I gotta take a leak somewhere. There you go, folks. That was Frank Bizzarro. To be continued.